Hello everyone and welcome to Apigee Online Meetup. My name is Kiki and I will be your host for today. We are live from Google London headquarters and we're very happy to have you here today. We have, after the first great success of our Apigee Online Meetup, we're hosting today the second session that has been designed exclusively for EMEA. We have a packed agenda today, so grab yourself a coffee, make yourself comfortable, and let's see what we have planned for today. All the session will be led by Oliver, who will first tell you why you should stop thinking about API as technology. After that, we're going to have some customer stories, and we're going to have, at the end, a guest speaker that will come and join us here at the studio. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to ask questions all the time. You can either type the link that is here on your browser or click on the Ask Questions button, a blue button that you're going to see on your watch page. So just before we get started, let's see the three main points that you should be doing today. First, ask questions as much as you can. Second, be prepared to give us our feedback, and don't forget to share the moments in social on the hashtag Apigee Online Meetup. That's it. Over to you, Olli.
Thanks, Kiki. Good afternoon. So I'm Olli Ogg, digital strategist at Apogee. And I'm going to be talking about not thinking about APIs as technology. And as a digital strategist, I spend the majority of my time really in that friction point often between business and technology teams, working with leaders to explore what the opportunities are for that organization, leveraging APIs for commercial success. So let's get started. So we all know what a project is: planned work with an end date. But there's a significant problem. It's project thinking. It really does reward doing the minimum and not screwing up. It certainly doesn't encourage you to be customer focused, and it certainly doesn't encourage you to be customer obsessed, which is of course what the digital native organizations are doing today. I imagine most of us have lived through some sort of death march of a project and can be pretty accepting to the sort of cultural aspects that really does encourage within the teams. I'm sure you can appreciate that doesn't help that long-term thinking and particularly focused around customer. So let's explore what I mean by an end date and the consequences of that. You know, APIs drive mobile, they drive web, they drive IoT. That is certainly not going away. And if one message would be that this is exactly where your organization needs to be fleet-footed, agile, nimble, to be able to onboard new channels in days and weeks, onboard partners within days and weeks. So APIs are certainly not going away. Pass the hot potato, I double dare you, right? The biggest mistake companies make when starting with APIs is to throw that hot potato to an integration team. But that's not right, okay? I'm going to be talking about how to defend against market share erosion, about you as an organization being able to adapt and explore to an ecosystem strategy, how your organization may well change revenue streams and your go-to-market strategy. So hopefully this makes now sense that it doesn't end up in the world of integration. Of course, the problem is APIs sound geeky. They sound technical. So if APIs are not a project, what are they? So on a journey of API adoption, it may well be that you have a programmatic level of funding to your API initiative. And this is a pretty good place to be. So not project, but a programmatic level of funding. And as a consequence of that, you will probably start to see the benefit of this momentum of producers and consumers of APIs. And that should feed into further investment. The key next stage is to get that level of funding for a platform play, a stable team that are going to own and nurture that platform and ecosystem and explore new business models. It's about doing business and technology in a new way by making the business itself consumable, being able to interact beyond your trust boundary. And if you think of the organizations that have typically dominated, let's say, the Fortune 500, and you take a snapshot, let's say, of the year 2000, 52% of those companies are no longer in that list, which is actually extraordinary. The companies that are dominating that list today are those that are adopting a platform strategy, being extremely good at interacting or enabling external players to interact with their organization for mutual success, mutual value. And mutual is the key word there. And ultimately, what one should see as a consequence of all this is really APIs become a way of life, certainly through something like an API first mandate. And certainly culturally within the organization, you'll see producers of APIs or producers of software certainly defaulting to an API first world. But critically, it's also about, are you open for business? Right? As an external player, can I arrive at a website or a developer portal, easily understand what you offer, easily sign up, easily interact? Can I go into production in minutes and hours? That's not normally possible with point-to-point integration. And throughout this journey, there's a maturity around understanding that APIs are products, digital assets, strategically important assets that the business need to understand, that the business need to understand how to leverage for commercial success, exploring new markets or growing existing markets. APIs power customer experience. Isn't it extraordinary today that actually so many organizations really struggle in building high quality, delightful customer experiences? And of course, our customers today have elevated expectations of what a customer experience should be at that brand level. I think often we get a sense of organizational complexity when we're interacting with an organization. As a customer, I'm interacting with the brand, but I may well experience the sort of implicit behavior of different lines of business. APIs are a key tool to enable you as an organization to be able to focus on building customer experiences that are fantastic, delightful, awesome. It hides that complexity. And for many organizations today, there is a lot of legacy, there's a lot of complexity, a lot of systems of record. And the key thing here is freeing up those consumer teams to be able to focus on delivering value, delivering that delight. APIs enable ecosystems and platforms effects. And so this is a really key opportunity for organizations today. And there can be caution because this is quite a significant shift in how to operate. Rather than being defensive and creating barriers of entry, this is about making a concerted effort to opening your doors to engage with external players. I often see some common challenges with this from leaders. One is that the organization is a substantial organization within a certain vertical. And so when they think about their ecosystem play, they think of themselves at the center of this new world. And actually, that is not often the case of where the significant opportunity lies. It's about you being able to participate in ecosystems. I think the other frequent challenge I see is that, when you compare yourself, a traditional organization, to the likes of Facebook or Apple or Google and look at those very mature platform plays, you can almost be alienated by the sense of how far we have got to go in order to be good at this. But I think if you look at our customer stories, you will see that many organizations have started, and they've started small, and they've grown to be extremely successful on that journey. And one other thing to be really mindful of is most organizations today are set up for product competition. So the chances are, when a competitor comes along and launches a new product, that the entire organization is set up to respond, and there's constant sort of toing and froing of marketplace pressures. And product disruption can be significant, but typically it plays itself out over a number of years. Platform competition and platform disruption ends up being extremely violent to the vertical. And we've seen many organizations that have suffered the consequences. If you consider BlackBerry and Blockbuster as two well-known, often referred to examples, and in those moments when Apple launched the iPhone, BlackBerry was certainly still obsessively focused on new products. I believe their handsets at the time had offered CPUs that were 4% faster. That was their competitive advantage. But of course, Apple, as part of that ecosystem play, had the App Store. That meant that platform was incredibly sticky, and that led to that fantastic success with that ecosystem. So APIs may drive revenue and growth, and certainly we've got a number of great customer stories now that tell that story. It's about new go-to-market strategies. It's about potentially revenue share with partners. It may well be about monetizing existing capabilities, or indeed new digital products that you can offer by combining your data with others. Monetization may well be a good strategy, and we certainly have customers who are doing that at scale. Revenue share may well be a good opportunity. But often also it's not about direct monetization. Monetization can be a distraction. It can be about you leading a very healthy partner ecosystem that enables you to enrich the services that you can offer to your customers. APIs can certainly help your company move faster. And this is the kind of classic playing field for Apigee, and when we're typically brought along to help a customer. It's about really driving extremely fast initial APIs and enabling that very fast delivery under very concerted timescales. And what you'll see going forwards after that initial momentum of APIs being built is that consumer teams, whether that's internal product teams or external partners, will be able to very quickly spin up and iterate new digital products. Through my experience, this has been really the key thing that really lit the fire with the business, that actually now we can launch a digital product within weeks, take it to production, in front of staff, in front of customers, and thereby start iterating and start learning actually what our staff and customers need. So perhaps this doesn't sound so geeky anymore. This is about customer experience, delightful customer experience. It's about those ecosystems and platform effects. It's about new revenue streams, increased revenue streams, and growth. And it's about speed, agility, and adaptability. Being able to do that fleet-footed, cheaply and quickly. It is a category mistake to mislabel a business-level catalyst like APIs as a tech ops issue. It's like classifying your company's revenue calculation as a pencil sharpening issue. The dichotomy is that significant. So, why does this happen? It's because APIs sound geeky. And I'm hoping by now that whether you're somebody from the business or whether you're somebody from a technology function, that you've got now important messages that you can leverage in communicating the value of an API initiative. Every organization also has blind spots where significant miscommunication can occur. So, with this diagram, we have the business on the left, we have IT on the right. And it's quite often that when we engage with the business, they say, IT is broken. It's often when we engage with IT, They say the business is crazy. We were set up for reliability, consistency, and safety. And there is this significant chasm of dysfunction, of despair between these two worlds, particularly friction points around funding investment life cycles, about execution and general process issues. So hopefully I haven't got you into a negative state, right? There is good news. Start by identifying two key things. These are the conditions conducive to significant success. That is the problem domain and the players, the stakeholders. So with the problem domain, and here we have our digital value chain showing that journey of data flowing from user through customer experience, developer, API team, and ultimately some sort of dependency and some sort of backend. And with the problem domain, it's significant to appreciate that actually most organizations focus on something like 1/25th, 1/30th of the actual challenge. It's really important that you encourage exposure of your APIs across all your data. These are the assets of your organization, the valuable assets for your organization. And by significantly investing and exposing that data, no doubt internally initially, that really enables a very different speed of delivery for the teams consuming those simple APIs. So sure, when it comes to players, often we very easily identify those technology players, the developers, developer relations, security, architecture, operations, and shared services and enterprise IT. But there are significant business players at play here. Get them on board, evangelize. Internal marketing, internal evangelism is critical to success. So branding and marketing, partners and alliances, somebody focused on new channels, lines of business technology teams, lines of business data and product teams. It's really important to get these players on board with the API initiative to understand the opportunity and become evangelists at their own right, so to enable that evangelism to operate at scale within your organization. I intimated it earlier, but if you look at it this way, we have brand, lines of business from the business side of things, a line of business technology, an enterprise or shared technology. Customers are interacting with the brand. That is their expectation, right? So it's really important with your API initiative, and of course, if of any digital products that you're building from a consumer experience point of view, that you're focused on that experience of brand interaction. So, since APIs are going to be part of how you do business from now on, I'm sure I've convinced you, I certainly hope I have. You need to think about certainly three critical things up front and early. Number one, how to streamline governance. So start safely, start small, but very rapidly you want to be able to federate those API activities across a complex organization safely. You want to make sure that when organizations or developers interact with your APIs, that they're getting that consistent brand experience, developer experience. Secondly, how APIs will be funded. Okay, hopefully not project funded now, maybe programmatic, but hopefully also a platform level of funding throughout your organization. And certainly also start exploring those new commercial models, new revenue streams, new go-to-market and revenue share with partners. APIs are a forcing function for an organization, and the big challenge won't be technology. It's okay to start with a small, important, useful, valuable API. It's okay to recognize that an operational aspect will exist. You really need to think about that lifetime of that digital asset, that digital product. If one example of a Silicon Valley culture would be, is to fail fast and iterate and learn. try new things, and be prepared that some won't succeed. It's important to kind of talk about what failing fast looks like for your organization. I spoke to a leader a year ago where he thought a year later and £1.5 million of investment was failing fast. I'm talking about hours, days, and weeks. More than anything, this is a mindset shift. It's about the business understanding APIs, but it's also about the IT community not thinking about APIs as just integration. So, the hot potato. This is about customer experience. It's about ecosystems and platform effects. It's about revenue growth, and it's about speed and agility. So, often, if you've got an audience excited about what the future may hold, the first question you'll have is, well, where can I start? And last year we launched Apogee Compass, which is a free, anonymous tool where you can score your current digital transformation initiative with a real focus around APIs. And it's important to really emphasize here that we've basically collated our 10 years of experience working with many hundreds of customers and distilled this into a very simple tool that all can leverage. So we distilled it down to 10 critical dimensions, 10 questions. It doesn't take long. Depending on your answer, you'll get a certain level against that dimension. You'll generate a score and some critical next steps ordered by priority. And you'll end up with a screen like this, your measurement on the left and your recommendations on the right. And it's important to realize that those tiles are something that you can explore. If you click on them, you'll get some very detailed recommendations on how to be successful, how to navigate with confidence on your digital journey. So let's go to some Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much, Olli. That was really interesting. And let's see now what we have here, questions from the audience. The first one I'm seeing here is from Felix, and his question is there an ADE?
Felix, I apologize, but I actually don't know what you mean by ADE. So hopefully you can resubmit that question and we'll get back to it at the end of the session. Apologies for that.
No problems. That's a good, I was wondering as well. So the second question would be, what advice do you have on getting started on API initiative with my own organization?
Okay, so leverage Compass. Leverage Compass with yourself, with your immediate teams, and use it as you explore and navigate the organization. It's quite often that when we start on a journey, we work with an internal mobilizer, an internal evangelist who gets it, often an IT architect who understands how to navigate the business. And it's about finding those pockets that you can leverage for momentum. And as I said earlier, start small, get confident in that initial operation, but also make sure you're planning for that growth. You'll certainly soon see a healthy demand of internal consumers wanting APIs, wanting access to core data and services. And of course, the partner will come knocking on the door where you should be able to offer APIs to enable those partners to onboard really quickly.
Great, thank you for that. The second question that I'm seeing here is, how does Apigee help their customers to start this journey?
So it's really important to emphasize that now as an organization, we're not focused on selling professional services anymore. We have a really fantastic team of customer success who really focus on working really intimately with a customer. So there's folk like me focused on digital strategy, working with business and technology leaders to look at the broader digital transformation, the commercial appetite, the commercial opportunities around APIs. And we have significant experience in driving substantial API programs and broader digital transformations through very complex organizations. And so we have a number of initiatives to really get that initial momentum with customers starting really strongly. It's really important to get that initial momentum kicked off so that you can start to see that value.
All right. And one last question. The question here is, I work for a big organization. How do I use Compass? And I think that the concern here is, will I get a lot of different measurements and responses?
So this is an interesting one because it really also depends on the culture of the organization. I've worked with companies where it's very consensus driven, and that's actually not going to help a significant change in how you operate. So hopefully you will be a resilient character. You'll be able to take Compass, you'll be able to work with your peers and your leaders and start taking measurements that don't match. Genuinely, not having consistent measurements is actually where the real interesting conversations occur. Explore where those different measurements arise. Explore why people have a different understanding of perhaps the status quo or indeed what the leadership vision might be. I think you'll find that fascinating.
Great. Thank you so much, Olli. And now we're going to go to our next step, that is the customer stories. So over to you guys.
Our customers are actually starting to demand the API. So there's a whole actual transformation that's outside of our enterprise that's actually helping us. So you kind of have to leverage that way.
I think we came to Apigee as a telco, but actually we discovered along the journey we're also an e-commerce provider. We're also, we fit into lots of other campuses. So actually the things that we've got in common with other customers of Apigee have been really, really good.
And so what we're able to do with our API is really open up that ability for others to start consuming design information, which means for us, we now have a completely new customer.
You learn to love APIs because they're a critical capability, and once you see the value beyond your own business and what value the APIs offer to your partners, to the developer community, to people who want to work with you to grow your business, you just can't help but love them.
We've seen a significant growth just in the last few months in developers being able to come in, kick the tires, play with the sandbox, and off and running on their production stuff.
We must ensure that the interactions that we have with our end users, those developers who are actually creating the solutions with our products, are top-notch. And because of that, we must have platforms that enable us to deliver very compelling solutions, but also ones that are very easy to use and implement.
We've been at Apogee for about 18 months now, and more and more traffic is going through. So we turned on the website, and we literally went from a few 100,000 requests, or about 100,000 requests a day, to 1 million requests a day, like that. Literally, we flicked the switch, and the grass just went bam.
I think that's probably that Apigee family, if you like, has been the most valuable thing that we found.
You just can't help but love them.
Welcome back. I hope you found that inspiring. I would like to welcome now Carl Robinson from Hermes, who was joining us for our fireside chat with Olli. Over to you, Olli.
Thanks, Geeky. So you may be disappointed, there is no fire, but there's certainly thunder and lightning outside, so if you're hearing any rumbling, that's probably why. So I'm really delighted to be joined here by Carl from Hermes. And I think what's really great about Apigee is that we've got a great set of customers who are willing to share their journey so that others can be successful. Carl, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here on this windy and rainy day.
So perhaps you could just let our listeners understand kind of where did your API initiative really initially start?
Okay, so we've been with Apigee for around 3 years, and I think we were actually, being honest, one of the companies that fell into some of the pitfalls you've talked about today. So we started with very much a project, and our original reason for going out to find an API gateway provider was to choose a technology rather than to find a way to empower our API platform going forwards.
Okay, great. And so, I mean, how has that now evolved from that initial project world and that project mindset?
So I think we've realised that if you set up a project team to work on any kind of software project, once that project's been delivered, you have the awkward conversation around how you fund that team going forwards, how you make future changes, maintenance, even when issues arise, how you support them. And I think that combined with our customers, actually asking us for APIs now. So we are in the logistics industry, and we work a lot with some of the fast fashion retailers and startups, and more we're being asked, okay, this digital transformation stuff you're doing is great. Have you got an API for that?
Okay, great. And I guess with that initial pressure from your customers, the business now is starting to understand that APIs are critical.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting actually. We've seen a shift in the way other functions in the business talk about technology. It's gone from, okay, we want a way to do this, to have we got an API to do this? And I think it's very much fallen on our new product teams to build that functionality out and have a defined roadmap of improvements and really value add features.
Great. And you've got a very interesting customer base, right? From the small, nimble, fast fashion outlet to the much more substantial online platforms selling at vast scale. And what's it like working with these organizations when you're offering an API? Are they quite demanding around what you're offering and how you're offering it?
Yes, I think it's interesting from a startup point of view. They tend to be our more demanding customers in terms of APIs. They're the ones that have got the agility traditionally to take what we're building and utilize it to expose business value of their own. Although we are starting to see more sort of what we would call traditional industry companies, so the traditional retailers start to pick up the API gauntlet as well.
Great, okay. And I sort of intimated it earlier, but APIs are sort of relatively invisible. In your world, working with colleagues, what do you do to evangelize around APIs? How do you make it real? So
it's interesting from an evangelism point of view because we've not recently really had to do that because we've had that external pressure coming in. The challenge we've faced is evangelizing what we're actually doing and sort of evangelizing our roadmap rather than what APIs are in general, because I think as a business we're starting to see a shift to actually understand what APIs are, and it's more about explaining to people what we're actually going to deliver for them. So the traditional sort of sales functions have something to go out and sell.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. A primary channel of engagement. This sounds great. And what's it like to kind of build those APIs for particular customers that are reusable assets? Culturally, what has had to happen within the organisation?
So I think we've seen this shift to focus on specific contexts. So we have at the moment a couple of ecosystems of APIs we're developing. We're developing the internal ecosystem, which is really powering our new web and app, as well as a sort of partner ecosystem, which is delivering functionality and business value to our corporate customers. And I think having that segregation is really how we're defining that roadmap.
Okay, and so what does the team look like today to build out APIs? What sort of advice do you have to our listeners about that API capability? I
think the key bit around teams is have a good team, and product teams allow you to do that. If you hire a team of people to work on a specific product, they become very engaged in it, and they understand and try and identify and show where you can actually make change and improve in future. Whereas I think project teams, because of the short-sighted nature of them, it really stumbles and stifles the growth and the enthusiasm of the team members. So I think that the key thing is to have a product team that's engaged, like we do at Hermes.
Yeah, it's a really great point actually to really emphasise that. And I often do talk about teams having a sense of purpose, ownership and trust. And that really is only enabled by a product mentality. You know, people living and breathing that digital product, getting that in, you know, getting all that data, getting all that learning, and evolving that product over time based on that deep interaction with customers.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have this burgeoning API program.
Yep.
What's it like federating out APIs? What sort of advice do you have to our listeners around doing that?
So getting APIs out through our company is an interesting one because everyone wants to build APIs, everyone wants access to APIs, so it's about limiting and proper governance. So we have a program, so that the product team that's building the client APIs have a program with a specific number of clients that we're testing and evolving our products before they're really ready for mass consumption. And we've also got this governance body that if other API needs come up, we can sort of look at the design and make sure they follow our best practices, so that regardless of whether it's something that's part of one of our API programs or something that's an immediate business need, whether it's strategic or tactical, they're really done to benefit the business.
Mm. Now, I guess governance can be a deep source of frustration. It can impede progress. The teams that really want to focus on delivering value, as in getting something into production, are impeded in getting that out there. What's that culture governance like at Hermes? What advice would you give?
So we're trying to keep it fairly thin at the moment. We're developing a set of pragmatic API design guidelines that are sort of the best practices to follow. In addition to that, we've got a lightweight governance body called the ADG, so the API Development Group, and they really have final say. It's more of an advisory board, but they do have final say to say, okay, no, we're not allowing that into the IT estate.
I guess it's an important principle because ultimately those APIs are a perimeter of the organisation. Yeah. You don't want to leak out anything that the consequences will be felt for quite a significant amount of time.
Definitely, and with GDPR that's becoming more and more apparent.
Yeah. So you're an organisation that has been around for a significant amount of time. You've no doubt got some legacy. What is it like dealing with that sort of clean set of APIs over the new world and the old world?
So I think having this API layer is kind of an abstraction away from our traditional legacy IT systems, really enables innovation within the business. So we have an innovation team that's been around for the last couple of years, and a lot of the reason that they've been able to innovate so fast and deliver actually so much for our business is we have that covering of APIs that allows them to access the actual business value without having to go in and make changes to the legacy systems.
Okay, great. I'd love to explore that innovation team a little bit more. So, actually, you share quite publicly some of the projects that have been built. It can also be sometimes a bit of a challenge about how to feed like all the positive elements of innovation incubator out to the broader organisation. Often very different ways of working, much less governance, but also the technical learnings, the product learnings. Yeah. What is it like at Hermes?
So it's interesting. I think what we're doing is trying to get that learning back into the business, and of course a shift away from sort of on-prem data centers to the cloud allows us to do that in some sense. It makes it much easier for us for the innovation lab team to build out functionality and bring it back within the company's IT estate. And I think having the things like the ADG and the governance process around that allows us to quickly assimilate some of those things, but maybe not the things that we don't want to.
Great. And what can you talk about some of the projects, the products that you've launched?
Yeah, so I think the big one is our conversational interfaces. So we were the first logistics company in the UK to launch experiences for Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa. And they really are built on top of our APIs. They are publicly available, so if you've got a Google Home or a Amazon Echo, you can go out and use them today, and they hook back into sort of our core business systems.
That's a great example, and I guess I think we're continually surprised about the new channels that are something that we can leverage. I think we probably thought when mobile became such a key player, that was probably it for a little while, and yet of course conversational UIs have come along.
Yes.
That channel agility is such an important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and APIs really sort of empower that channel agility. It makes it easy to build out new functionality for a different platform if all you've got to do is hook into the same common set of APIs that really expose your business value. And I think we try and call it a front door to business value, because they really are the thing that allow you to be agile, be fast, and make a difference.
I really like that analogy of the front door, the sign on the front door saying, yes, we're open for business, come in and start interacting. Perhaps we can explore product management and APIs as products a little bit more. So what have you had to learn, perhaps as an individual or perhaps as a team, around the product management of APIs?
So I think what we're starting to have in the client platform team that we're building is a strong group of stakeholders from across the business that we share our roadmaps with, that they know what we're doing and have the opportunity to input into that and really drive out their requirements of what these products, because that's what they are, should look like going forwards. And I think the other thing about running a product team that utilizes technology is really listening to your customers. And I like the term you used earlier, developer experience, because that's something we're really focused on. We're currently building a developer portal, and it's how do we make it easy for developers to quickly jump onto our platform. And I think we may have altered the term that you guys use normally, but we call it time to first parcel. Fantastic. And traditionally that's been anywhere up to 6 months, and it's how can we really pull that back and make it so it's maybe within a couple of hours rather than a couple of months.
And actually you touch on something really kind of critically important, which is how do you measure success? And that feeds back into further funding and further investment. So time to parcel is a great measurement, a key strategic element of your partner's success. Any other tips around measurement and business KPIs?
I think it's about, as you said, it's exposing something key first. And although everyone says not to focus on transactions and things like that, they are a key measure of how you're doing. And I think the other one in that group that's actually often left out is the number of active developers you have. And if you're focusing on developer experience, the number of developers that are actually building new apps and new services on top of your platform is a key measurement.
So we had lunch earlier, and you talked about your journey around services. I'm interested to explore a little bit about what is it like at Hermes with your internal APIs and external APIs. Any particular lessons learned there?
Yeah, so I think it's key to make business value as accessible quite low down in your stack, to give you the agility to build APIs that are maybe more focused towards a specific context. So whether it be internal, like our web and app channels, or external via our client APIs, it's important to still be able to use the same underlying business logic, but tailor the experiences to a specific context.
Awesome. Okay. And I guess one of the challenges that you may well experience now is with this more aggressive appetite of APIs from really important partners. How do you strike that balance about reacting to that urgent demand, something strategically critical for the organisation, no doubt a significant deadline in play? How do you balance that with building this digital asset, this API that has to be leveraged by multiple players going forwards?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting debate, and I don't think it's something we're even quite there with yet. But I think it's the key fact is you should have an API roadmap. You should have it well defined what you're delivering when, and you should do your utmost to deliver to that roadmap. Any other sort of business critical functionality, or maybe even strategic functionality that's needed should be, yes, it should be done, but it should be done in a way that it can be pulled into the rest of the program, and it should maybe be done by a separate product team or even a project team, as long as that work's going to be pulled in later on.
Okay, great. So we're coming close to the end of our time, and I want to re-emphasise, do please feed in your questions. Opportunity also to dive a little bit deeper into the technology aspect as well. One of the things I'm aware of is that you're leveraging the likes of Swagger. Can you talk about what that life cycle of producing APIs and delivering them into production is like for your teams?
So I think the key thing that we do in the design life cycle is we try and do contract first development, and it might not be the finalized version of what comes out at the other end, but we try and really nail down what our API will look like to start with. Any changes that come along due to changes in functionality or new requirements completely can be adopted in, but it's key to have a vision of what you're actually looking to build right at the start, so everyone's on the same page.
Great, and I guess that contract first development is something that enables that kind of fast feedback into the broader governance piece, get peer review, so that I guess through lightweight, cheap interaction, you're not having to put the door or slam the door just before something hits into production.
Yeah, definitely.
And what's it been like with like test automation and continuous delivery?
So I think most of the APIs that we're actually building are fairly greenfield or brownfield because they're using existing services, but we've got this ability to deliver into production almost constantly, and I think it's having that Swagger automation there as well. It allows us to build tests and understand, even before anything else is built, what the requirements for a specific test are.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. So I think we're coming up to the end of this initial section. So very keen to be able to have an opportunity to answer the questions from our audience. Over to you, Geeky.
Yeah, Carl, thank you very much. That was super interesting. Thanks for sharing your story. And now we're going to see our audience and the questions that we have. The first one, how to explain the value of API to pharma company? Typically split in silos, different business units, high level of customized solutions with small chance of reusability. So I have few questions in one here for you guys.
Okay, shall I take that one, Carl?
Yeah.
That's very kind. Actually, interestingly, I was working with an organisation a few months ago, a pharma organisation, and actually what we discovered is that there was a great area to focus on initially, and I think this is one of the key things is, have that sense of the opportunity across the broader organisation, but also really understand and really identify where you want to invest initially. Small chance of reusability is an interesting one because I'd love to explore that a bit more. Often, customer identity or staff identity is like strategically important to unlock a load of other value, a load of other APIs. So that's often a really critical API to get going initially. And by the way, if you've got project level funding and you're delivering a strategically important API like that, then who owns that going forwards is going to be a pain point. And then really focus, I think, on your users. So don't necessarily think about it from a capability mindset, but focus on your potential customers, which probably will be your scientists and your partner ecosystem. I think your partner ecosystem is probably incredibly rich, incredibly valuable. So what are the barriers of engagement that your partners are struggling with today? Deeply interact, deeply nurture that relationship with those partners to understand that. getting honest feedback from internal technology teams can actually be quite a challenge. So build that rapport. Yes, and I guess silos are pretty significant in most organisations, but I think perhaps I've answered that that aspect. Okay.
Great. Our next question from Amin. What is the value for my current API that Apigee? So how can I add value to my current API with Apigee?
So I think if I answer this from a customer point of view, APIs are great, and you can have as many as you want internally at the moment. What Apigee for us really adds is the sort of traffic management and API management layer. It's the protection for those APIs. It's the key management. It's a number of features that really are provided as a service as part of Apigee, rather than having to go and maintain them if you're building them yourself.
The consistent security, consistent path to production, consistent operational dashboards and alerts are really critical when you actually are thinking about building out microservices. You're looking at a landscape of hundreds, if not thousands, of endpoints. You need something that enables you to do that confidently and not have silos of teams operating very differently.
Great, thank you. Next question from Sedat. If we're not on Google Cloud, is it possible to have Apigee for our local APIs?
So perhaps if I take that first, because obviously Hermes leverages a certain cloud provider, not Google Cloud at the moment, at least. Yes, there is an Apigee version that some of our customers use on premise, and for certain customers, that is right. I think what's been really interesting to note over the last couple of years is that, well, in fact, let's say the last year and a half, there's been a significant shift in major companies, such as banks and even telcos, actually saying, we don't actually now want to operate this. We actually now want to leverage a cloud provider. And we have companies operating Apigee in Azure, in Google Cloud, and in Amazon Web Services. Perhaps you want to talk about AWS?
Yes, I think for us, we use the SaaS version of Apigee. One of the great things for us is we don't have to manage the infrastructure and the underlying technologies it runs on. It gives us an abstraction away from our infrastructure as well, so it's not something that has dependencies that are deep-rooted into our system, so it gives us that abstraction level. And I think for us, it's really valuable in that sense.
I guess I know that for some of our customers, they've already significantly invested in a particular cloud provider, and they want to make sure that certainly that API perimeter layer is as close as possible to that existing investment, that existing infrastructure, and so that's why they want to make sure that is not on Google Cloud. It's also important to emphasize it's about meeting customers where they are today. Architectural agility is a key strategic advantage, I think, for organizations. So you may well today have something significant on-prem. You may well also have a number of different cloud providers that are serving up some sort of back end that you want to expose as APIs. Many of our customers are building APIs on top of the likes of Salesforce for customers. So hybrid cloud, cross-cloud is a major thing.
Yeah, great. One question for Carl from Marco. So what are the concrete examples at Hermes of how you collaborate with external partners based on APIs?
So we are, first and foremost, a logistics company. We ship parcels, and we have a lot of partners that use our APIs to send parcels with us. We're currently in the process of sort of building out our new client platform, and we have a number of clients that we're working with directly to sort of test out and refine those APIs before they go out to wider consumption by our client network.
Great, thank you. We have the reframed question from Felix. So what he meant is there an API development environment that links to Compass?
Okay, Felix, no. I guess ultimately, I mean, you know, Apigee provide different mechanisms to deliver APIs, and I kind of feel like Compass is a very different thing from typically the life cycle of producing an API. So, you know, Apigee provides a lot of different mechanisms to produce APIs in this API lifecycle, depending on how you want to operate. If you want to operate contract first, test automation, continuous delivery, you can do so. If you want to do it in the user interface and manipulate XML and drag and drop, you can do so. And yes, Compass doesn't really join up with that, but I'd love to hear how you think that might do.
Great. So another question, and so the question is, how do you communicate API-enabled end-user experience to non-technologists? They don't see APIs. They see a broken browser window, not updating with the latest information, transaction, or communication. So
I feel like that's a very UX question, and I think it's from your front-end applications, it's about understanding what's coming back from your APIs and presenting some kind of response that sort of lets them know to try again later or gives them a good user experience.
And I think there's something there around sources of truth. I mean, I'm not sure where this broken window might occur. You know, is this pre-APIs or post-APIs? But I think having consistency of leveraging APIs by all your channels is a critical thing. Don't have, you know, one team that have built a user interface tied into some complex dependency. Have everybody running off those sources of the truth. Otherwise, you end up kind of with two tankers gradually drifting away, and that's going to add complexity going forwards. I mean, leverage the material that I delivered earlier about how to communicate the value of APIs, and ultimately you should be able to offer much better user experiences if you're delivering high quality APIs. Never compromise on that user experience.
Great, thank you so much. So we are getting to the end of our session today. We would love to hear from you, your feedback. So please feel free to fill the form and give us your thoughts and suggestions. Also, don't forget to share your moments on social with the hashtag Apigee Online Meetup. And thank you for watching, and hope to see you guys soon one more time.